Oh, next time I'll this means,
Lovely.
oh, right, okay. Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me to give a talk on this pet project of mine. Just to give a bit of background, for the last 30 odd years, I've been working as this as a hobby on and off, surveying the vernacular houses of the uplands of Gwent, particularly the industrial valleys of Gwent, like Ebbw Vale, Pontypool, and so forth. Um, uh, if I just, oh, there we are. This is the study area. As I said, it's the industrialized valleys, basically between the agricultural parts of Monmouthshire, which was studied in great detail by Fox and Raglan back in the 1950s. You may be familiar with their books. Um, they saw about 470 houses in Monmouthshire. Only 14 were in this shaded area. So I felt there was a gap that needed to be filled. And despite the intensive industrialization of this area, with coal mining and iron mining and so forth, there is a lot of old houses surviving. Just there's about 30,000 listed buildings in Wales. 36 are in this area, but I said there's a lot more. My database at the moment is about 240, which consists of existing houses, ruined houses, and a few disappeared houses. Because in the 30 years, houses have come and gone. Anyway, the process of dendrochronology, you may be aware of it. It's to do with tree ring dating. So the basic principle, just to revise, the basic principle is you take a tree, you chop it down. You haven't got to take your shirt off for this, but it sometimes helps. And then you count the rings. You can see there. I don't know if can you see the little arrow on the screen? Perhaps you can't. Anyway, that's the basic principle. Every year, a tree grows a growth ring under the bark. So the bigger the tree, or the older the tree, the more rings you have. But the really clever thing is that the tree is a living record of the climate. If it's been a good growing season, it's been a thick ring. If it's a poor growing season, it's a thin ring, and that affects pretty much the whole of Britain. So you'll have take a slice, you'll have a distinctive pattern of thick, 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 thin, 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 thick, thick, thin, 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 and so on down the centuries. That's the principle of dendrochronology. So what we do, you drill into an existing timber, take out your sample, polish it so that you can see the various pattern of the rings, a bit like DNA fingerprinting, really. You can see even on this photograph that there's a distinctive pattern of thick, thin, thick, 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 thin, and so on. And that can be matched with a regional chronology. So that, I said, this is something I did the last 2 years. I thought I wanted to do it. It's a very expensive process, but it's the only way you can get accurate dates for the houses that are not don't have date stones or are not accurately dated. So far, it's basically a guesstimate. We compare buildings with better dated or more securely dated buildings, and then just compare the architectural features. And we think it's this age, you think it's that age. It's, as I said, it's a guesstimate. So what sort of houses do we have in the uplands? In this region of Wales, the predominant vernacular house type is the small stone house, not timber frame. There's very little evidence for timber framing in the uplands. Small stone houses. Three commonest plans are the direct entry house, which is a classic country cottage where you've got the doorway here. I hope you can see this little pointy arrow going directly into the main room, the hall. So this is a classic country cottage. It's a very common plan in Wales because most 18th and 19th century houses were built in this way. Just the door goes straight into the hall. But earlier examples are far fewer. In the uplands, we also have lobby entry houses where the entrance is facing the fireplace. So when you enter the doorway, you basically face a blank wall and you have to turn left or right. It depends on where the chimney is, which is why in some parts of Britain, they're called baffle entry houses because you're baffled when you come in, you don't know which way to turn. But there's quite a few lobby entry houses in the uplands, although the stronghold of the lobby entry house is in mid Wales. Far more common in the uplands are the hearth passage house, where the doorway is in the end wall with a fireplace, and you have the classic Welsh longhouse where the outer room is a cowshed. So you enter the house from the cowshed. So it's a very old type of house. Obviously, it's long, as the name suggests, and you have a communal cross passage. So the cows go into the house and they turn right to the cowshed. The people turn left into the house. There's lots of long houses in the uplands. Some of them are contemporary. The cowshed is contemporary with the house, which is a true long house. But there's quite a few of them where the cowshed was stuck onto the end of a house, which is not really a long house, but it looks like one. So those are the three main types of houses that we've got in the uplands, and they're all well represented in the Gwent uplands. Now, let me go wrong way. Now then, these are some of the houses I've sampled, and I haven't sampled it. I've got people to sample them for me. So this is up at Ebbw Vale. One roof truss has been dated to 1537. And very quickly, what's very interesting, that was the first house I had done back in a freezing January of last year. And since then, I've come across a lease dated 1538 between George Herbert, steward of Abergavenny Lordship, and I think it's Rosser ap Gwilym ap Dafydd ap Llywelyn ap something, something, something. They had long names in those days. But this Rosser was obviously the guy who built the house. His lease is dated 1538, and he had that lease for 99 years, as was common at the time, very long leases, for 40 pence a year and a couple of chickens at Christmas. If only rents could be as cheap as that these days. So this is a very rare example of dendrochronology confirming documentary evidence. The tree was cut down in 1537. The house, the lease, was 1538. So maybe Prosser was a bit optimistic. He's going to get his lease signed, and he told his carpenter to get chopping. Now then, this is another farmhouse, Abertillery. This obviously dated 1583. It's a derelict house, but in the process of being restored. And you can see the characteristic upper cracks, which are very common in these areas. Nearby, there's Gwryd Mawr, which is quite an outstanding house. It's been carefully restored, as you can see. And we surprisingly found that the upper cracks here, these timbers here, could be one of the oldest in Wales. The oldest house so far, or the oldest crack house, I'm assuming you know what cracks are. They're the curving timbers that support the roof. The earliest house, I think, is 1402. So we didn't get a precise date on this, but it's in that date range. So it's very likely one of the oldest houses in Wales, although all that's left of it is the upper cracks here, which have been reused in the 1574 makeover. So this is a reconstruction of the medieval phase. The cracks you just saw are this one. I do hope you're seeing the arrows. It seems to have formed a partition, probably at the upper end of the hall. Then in 1574, there was a major makeover. The old open hearth was done away with, and you had the chimney. And then about 1600, it was reconstructed as a typical upland longhouse. The medieval cracks were just raised, heightened 3 times. It's amazing they've actually survived at all. You just think people would just chuck them and cut new trees down. It's remarkable. We're hoping to fine-tune that date, to see how close we can get that date. Haverdarth then is one of the houses that Fox and Raglan picked up in their books. It's a very fine unit system house, just like Gwryd Mawr. The unit system house consists of at least one farmhouse on the same site. It's very common to find 2 farmhouses. The original longhouse is 1590, and adjoining it is a complete house in itself, 1625. So there's quite a few unit system houses up in the uplands. I got about 20 of them. So they're quite well preserved. Llanhilleth, unfortunately, is not well preserved, as you can see. It's a very sad sight. The black and white photographs taken in about 1990, when there was a little Renaissance tower block on the right-hand side. That's gone, and most of the roof has gone. But it was only as it fell into rack and ruin that I realised it was a crack house, and you might be able to see the crack embedded in the wall. The colour photograph and the reconstruction drawing are basically from the same angle. So it was a very, very fine house in its day. Regrettably, it was not listed in time or preserved. I think it fell into decay in the 1970s, and now there's very little left of it now, as you can see. But we did get some dates. Unfortunately, not the cracks. So the crack must be predating the 15, 14, 36 date range we had. When I first saw it, that the post and panel screen um, was pretty much intact. Now it's a mess, unfortunately. Teithloyd is another surprisingly early house. It doesn't look it, but it was a typical 17th century long house. But the upper crack here was different to all the others. It's a listed building, and again, it's in a pretty bad state. But the owner, because it was listed, the owner had to put a tin roof on it, so that's preserved it from worse decay than Llanhilleth. But you can see this nice timber work inside is subject to vandalism, unfortunately. But the one crack, as I said, dated 1485. Again, it's exceptionally early. The listing notes thought it was 16th century. It was different to the other cracks. I thought, yeah, go along with that, 16th century. So it was a real surprise, 1485, a significant date in Welsh history, because that's when the Tudors came onto the throne and Richard III was buried under a car park in Leicester. So it's quite a significant date there. Oh, that is the end of the slideshow. I'm sorry. I think we've got 5 minutes left, 10 minutes left. I could talk really slowly. Just run back over these. I think I've probably been talking too fast, but I think that's the end of this slideshow. So I'm open to questions.